Do you ever notice how during certain tasks your knees may tend to cave in, whether it's jumping down, lifting heavy weights, or doing a quick cut? This movement is called knee valgus. And what it is it's an inward rotation of the knee. But rarely does anyone talk about why this happens or if it's good or bad. That changes today. You're gonna learn what knee valgus is in this video, if it's a bad thing, and what we can do to improve the mobility and motion within the knee so it happens only when it's supposed to. Knee valgus, or when the knees cave in, is a combination of distal or lower femur internal rotation and tibial external rotation. Sometimes this can put increased strain on the inside portion of the knee. And the likely reason this happens is because it allows you to put force into the ground. Internal rotation, or when a limb rotates inward, is necessary when you put force into the ground. But let's say in a certain context, you can't put enough force into the ground, or you lack internal rotation. Your body may use a different type of strategy to create the same action. Knee valgus is one of those strategies. Now there's a couple ways this can happen. The pelvis can tilt anteriorly, and when the pelvis does that, it rotates the entire femur inward, and then the tibia, the bottom shin bone, will rotate outward, creating the knee valgus. The other way it can happen is if there's a loss of internal rotation at the hip, the knee will create that rotation only at the lower portion of the femur, because it's normal to have a little bit of twist throughout the femoral bone. So I can either have a global knee valgus strategy, which happens with the anterior tilt, or I can have a local valgus strategy, which happens with a local knee issue. Now, is this a bad thing? Well, it depends on what studies you read. Some studies, like this one right here, show that increased knee valgus can contribute to stress on the shin in runners. And if you look at this study right here, this movement combined with internal rotation is enough strain on the ACL to elicit a tear. But on the flip side, this study showed that knee valgus has no relationship whatsoever to knee pain in runners. And another study showed that this isn't a movement we should avoid, but it's something we should control. And sometimes powerful people use this strategy to their advantage. If you look at elite powerlifters or Olympic lifters, you'll notice that the knees cave in when they ascend out of the bottom of the lift, whether it's a snatch or a back squat. This could be a useful way that person puts more force into the ground so they can lift the weight up. Another elite athlete who uses this all the time is basketball players. Watch any single NBA player shoot a jump shot. You'll notice almost all of them let the knees cave in as they do that quick jump. I was a physical therapist and a strength coach in the NBA. My thought is these guys use that strategy because think about the number of jumps that they're doing over the course of a game. It's likely a more efficient strategy for them to use knee valgus because there's less neuromuscular demands, so they can get up more shots with less fatigue. But in those scenarios, these are athletes who are performing at the highest level. They're trying to produce as much force as humanly possible so they can win at their given sport. Is this something we want to see with a bodyweight squat or even a very light squat? That's where I draw the line when I see knee valgus. Take my sister right here as she jumps up and down. This is a very light jump, but you'll notice that her knees cave in when she does this. We can also look at this girl right here who's doing a very lightweight squat, but her knees dive in almost instantaneously. And she had pain with this movement. Is that something that we should be okay with and try and control? I say no. We want to reserve this strategy for our highest force-producing efforts. But when it's more low-intensity things, we want to try to do things to minimize this action from happening. And there's 3 strategies we're going to use in this video to do just that. Step 1, improve your hip mobility. There's 2 strategies I talked about that can contribute to knee valgus. Either the pelvis tilting anteriorly or a loss of hip internal rotation. So the first thing you need to do is figure out which of those is you. You're going to want to self-test your hip rotation. Lie on your back with either a phone or some sort of camera facing you bottom up. Here you want to lift your hip up to a 90-degree angle, and without moving the knee, wavering it all around, you want to spin your leg inward. If the foot is inward, that is external rotation. And then you want to spin your leg outward. That is internal rotation. Normal hip external rotation is about 60 degrees. This is what 60 looks like. Normal internal rotation is 40 degrees. This is about what 40 looks like. If you're someone who has a loss of external rotation, you're going to want to do activities that work on expanding the upper part of the pelvis. That can reduce the propensity to anterior pelvic tilt, so that way you have more options available at your disposal. To expand the upper part of the pelvis, we're going to use this wall squat. You want to have your back up against the wall. You're going to weight bear through the PSIS, which is the bony prominence just above the pelvis. Be about your foot length away. Keep weight through that part of the hips, as well as the inside heel and the base of the big toe. Look straight ahead. Arms will be up like so. You're going to silently breathe in through the nose, softly exhale through the mouth, staying heavy through those points. Make sure you don't force your back up against the wall, otherwise you'll lose those points. Perform 5 sets of 5 breaths 2 times per day for 2 to 4 weeks. See how your hip external rotation improves. If you have a loss of internal rotation, you're going to want to target activities that work on expanding the lower part of the pelvis. Get a small plate or a light weight. You're going to straddle the corner of a box, toe out slightly, but you don't want to have a big toe out. You're going to soften the knees, keep weight on the inside heel and the base of the big toe. Silently breathe in through the nose, exhale, reach the plate straight out. From here, you're going to inhale, sit back into the box, keeping the arms fixed. Exhale, come up. Inhale, sit to the box without rocking back. Exhale, come up. You'll want to do 3 to 4 sets of 6 to 8 reps a couple times per day with that move. Step 2, make sure you have adequate knee bend. Now, the knee is not a hinge joint. It's actually a joint that rotates as you bend and straighten. When you bend the knee, the tibia has to rotate inward, called internal rotation, and the femur has to rotate outward, called external rotation. This is the exact opposite strategy of knee valgus. So if we can encourage this knee bending action, we can reduce the valgus problems locally. This is especially important if you're that person who's creating the action solely at the knee joint. Try this foam roller move to improve your knee bend. Take a foam roller and put the tibial tuberosity, which is that bony point just below your patellar tendon, on the foam roller. You're gonna roll your leg out to the side. From here, keeping that roll, you're gonna inhale, rock back, exhale, come forward. Inhale, rock back, exhale, come forward. You're gonna do 2 to 3 sets of 10 for 2 to 4 weeks before moving on to this active variation. Find a bench or a box, put your foot on it. You're gonna take your inside hand, grab that bony part right in front of your shin, pull it inward. Take your outside forearm, put it right against your thigh. You're gonna twist that part outward, maintaining pressure and keeping weight on the inside heel and the base of the big toe. You're gonna inhale, push your knee forward, exhale, bring it back. Inhale, push your knee forward, exhale, bring it back. Maintain that rotation throughout. You're gonna do 2 to 3 sets of 10 per side for a couple weeks. Now, having good hip and knee motion is one thing, but if we can't use it at higher intensities, it's not gonna be that worthwhile. It's like having a Ferrari, but not knowing how to drive stick. That's where you're going to need to practice using these motions at higher intensities. And that's where we can use things such as goblet squats and split squats to work on using these movements while minimizing the knees caving in. The way you can do that is by making sure that your foot stays flat and you have most of your weight on the inside heel and the base of the big toe. But it's just your weight bearing. Do not force the foot inward to get these foot contacts, because if you do that, your knees will cave in. And the general cue that I use with squatting is push the knees straight forward over your midfoot and have your rear drop straight down. That works both for squatting and for split squats. Now, to make sure that you don't cause the knee valgus right away, start with easier movements such as goblet squats or front foot elevated split squats. But if you notice your knees still cave in, even with something like a goblet squat, you can put a band around your knees, but you just want to use that as a placeholder to push the knees out slightly. You're not going to do this big knees going out sort of thing. We ain't about that life. We want to just keep the knees centered, so that way we can create the movement necessary to minimize valgus at the pelvis. Now that will tackle slower speed exercises, but it's not going to be the best way to transfer to high speed tasks, such as most sporting activities, cutting, and jumping. For that, we're going to manipulate plyometrics in a way that reduces the amount of force we need to put into the ground. My two favorite ways to do that are band-assisted jumps and box jumps. With a band-assisted jump, you essentially unweight yourself, so you don't have to put as much force into the ground, but you can still work on improving the stretch shortening cycle. That's what we use to move fast. And if you notice that the knee still caves in, just make the band heavier until it doesn't. The other strategy I like to use is box jumps. Box jump shouldn't be this cool thing that you do for the gram. It's actually a way that you reduce the amount of time you're falling to the ground after you jump in the air. So if your knees cave in as you land, a box jump is a great way of fixing that. What you want to do is you want to start with a higher box, but not one so high that you got to really tuck your hips up, and then you reduce the height of the box over time, making sure that you continue to jump high. Now, if you notice that your knees are still caving in quite a bit and you're unsure what to do, you might have to tackle your hip mobility a bit more than you think. For that, I would check out this video right here where I go into some other strategies that you can use to improve your hip mobility so you have the knees caving in less.